Welcome to another edition of the Conversations That Matter podcast. My name is John Harris. I am pleased to have a guest with me today who's going to help us navigate a topic that's been around for a while, but it's becoming more popular now, and that is Bitcoin. We have Jimmy Song with us. He's a programmer. He's written 2 books, Programming Bitcoin, The Little Bitcoin Book, and he's contributed to a Christian book called Thank God for Bitcoin. I've gotten a few chapters into that. And you can find his material at programmingbitcoin.com. Jimmy, thank you for stopping by and being willing to explain this to us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on. I've been a fan of yours for a while, so glad to be on the show.
Well, that is very kind of you to say that. I want to start off just with a basic question for all the listeners out there to hear you answer, and that is, what's wrong with traditional investments, land, money?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, we're coming back to money. You know, if you're have $10 million, you know, aren't you pretty secure for the future? What's the problem with that thinking?
Yeah, the unfortunate reality of the current monetary system is that if you have the US dollar or the Japanese yen or the euro or something like that, it's essentially a melting ice cube, is how I would describe it. It's constantly being debased by all of the money printing that's going on. It used to be that the dollar was convertible to gold. In fact, every currency in the world at one point was convertible to gold. But starting in 1971, that tie to gold was severed by Richard Nixon in 1971 with sort of an executive order. As a result of that, whenever any central bank can essentially expand the money supply to their heart's content, and that means that your savings in dollars gets reduced every time that happens. So, for example, the M2 money supply, which is a measure of how many dollars that exist, started at the beginning of 2020 was $15.5 trillion. It ended 2020 at $19.5 trillion. So that's an expansion of something like 30%. And that affects your savings. So you can think of your savings as having diluted. So even if you have $10 million, it just sort of diluted 30%. Now, you might not feel that right away, but, go try buying something kind of expensive like real estate or, a pro sports team or something like that. Those things are going up at much faster rates than, say, eggs or milk or jeans or something like that. So as a result, what you have is a system that perpetuates sort of inequality, a lot of grift and a lot of theft, as we argue in the book, that are really kind of immoral and really kind of put the wrong incentives in and cause a lot of strife for a lot of people.
And of course, this is where some of the Christian moral principles come to play, as you just mentioned with stealing. I know that at the beginning of our republic, there was kind of an effort, really up until probably Lincoln, there was an effort of the more Jeffersonian Democrats to get rid of the national bank because they just thought that was the worst thing. And of course, now we have a Federal Reserve System. And it's such a monstrosity. There's really not much, politically that seems that we can do about that. But there are other investments, and this is why I wanted to have you on, is for the Christians, especially in the audience, who have invested in traditional things, obviously money, but gold, property. They're not familiar with another investment, many of them, and that's cryptocurrency. And you seem to know a lot about this. So what are the advantages of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general?
Yeah, the current monetary system is horribly broken. And I think you sort of hinted at this. The first and second national banks of the United States were central banks that expanded the money supply. They were sort of able to retire the debt from the revolution and so on through doing that, and the War of 1812 with the second bank and so on. But that was essentially stealing from the savings of everybody else. Now, the fact that the United States at that time was expanding so quickly in terms of agricultural production and industrial production allowed it to sort of hide some of the theft that the government was doing through those. And Andrew Jackson very courageously ended the second national bank, and he was able to get a balanced budget, which I don't think he gets enough credit for. Now, that said, the current system makes it so that it is very difficult to save money or store value, right? Like to store for the future. And in fact, pretty much anyone that has any amount of wealth has to spend an inordinate amount of time trying to preserve their wealth. They have to look into different investments, kind of like what you're saying. You have to look into gold and land and stocks and bonds and all sorts of different vehicles, because they know that if they keep it in cash, it's constantly being debased. So you're going to lose money if you try to stand still. It's a system that forces you to sort of run on a treadmill in order to stay in the same place. The reason for that is sort of the economic philosophy of most of these countries that have a central bank, and pretty much every country nowadays does, and it's kind of imposed by the IMF, which I won't go into right now. But basically, they want the money to circulate through the economy. They call that the velocity of money, and this is a very Keynesian concept of if the money sluices through the economy, then the healthier we are. It doesn't matter what you spend it on. That's sort of the Keynesian philosophy there. But because of that, whenever you have a place to park money, well, that money's not moving. And so that is essentially what a store of value is, somewhere to park your money. So the current system is sort of almost designed to make it very hard to park your money in any one place. The few places that we do have that are places like stocks, gold, and real estate. And you'll notice with all of them, at least with physical gold anyway, there's a lot of transaction costs. If you order physical gold, they have to actually ship it to you. And if it's a significant amount, then you're going to have to hire armed guards to bring it to you and so on. If it's real estate, all of the different fees that go into it. There's a lot of people that are very rich because they get in the middle of that transaction in order to facilitate the transferring of property. Stocks also, there's a lot of different ones. There's commissions. There's all sorts of different things that are going on. And you'll notice that all of these have gone up significantly in the past year. And the reason for that is because the Fed is printing just so much money. There's $6 trillion or something to that effect that the Fed has essentially made available to the economy in order to shore up all of the stuff that's gone down with coronavirus and so on. So as a result, there really aren't very good stores of value. And on top of that, a lot of the stores of value are not very fungible. One property in the middle of San Francisco is very different than, a farmhouse in Iowa or something like that. So a similar thing with stocks, right? Tesla stock is not the same as, American Express or whatever. They're very different, and you get this sort of perception of luck that comes into it, or a lot of study and a lot of insider knowledge that you need in order to do it. The nice thing about Bitcoin is that it is scarcer than all of those things. There's a fixed 21 million limit. It's digital and it's decentralized. Decentralized meaning that there's no central entity that controls the supply. And that is very different than the dollar. It's more akin to gold, where if I wanted to go search for gold by, taking a shovel to my backyard and digging for it, I can. I'm probably not going to be successful, but it is something that I can do. In the same way, Bitcoin is such that anyone can try to mine for it. You're probably not going to be successful. You can actually try to mine with your phone, but it's extremely unlikely, like many orders of magnitude unlikely than like even taking a shovel to your backyard looking for gold. But in principle, it is decentralized, and for that reason, it's a lot better, and it's perfectly scarce in the sense that there's only 21 million that will ever be. And there's fungibility, like an insider investor in Silicon Valley gets the exact same Bitcoin as a farmer from Jakarta. So that makes it a lot more fair, a lot easier, and you don't have to worry about it as much, and you can put your money, time, and energy into doing other things that are more productive for civilization.
Now, one of the things I know people are thinking about right now, as you explained all that, is how in the world do they limit it to 21 million? And what about counterfeit Bitcoin? And I know the blockchain technology is part of what keeps this secure. Could you explain that?
Yeah, sure. So when you so I'm going to make the analogy to your bank, right? Like when you go and deposit some money at your bank, what they don't do is take your money and put it into a drawer that's named John or something, and then say, okay, that's where your money is. That's not what they do. They put the money into their vault or something like that, and then they put your name on the ledger and put plus $500 or however much you deposited. And when you transfer money, write a check to somebody else at the bank or to your friend, that money gets debited from your account and added to that other person's account. That's how ledgers work. The Bitcoin blockchain is essentially the ledger for absolutely everybody. And amazingly, this works really well because everyone has a copy of that ledger, and you can validate that everything balances and so on. And part of the rules of the software that runs is there's a particular schedule of Bitcoin coming into existence, and this is where the mining analogy comes in handy. It's kind of like digging for gold, and every 10 minutes, there's a certain amount of Bitcoin that comes into existence and has from the beginning. So at the very beginning, it was 50 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. And then 4 years later, it was 25. 4 years later, it was 12 and a half. Currently, it's 6.25 Bitcoins that come into existence. And every 4 years, it halves so that it asymptotically goes to 21 million. And the software enforces this and makes sure that the ledger balances, that there aren't any illegal transactions, that there aren't transactions that are creating new money and so on. And it's very easy to figure out if the Bitcoins that you're being sent are legitimate. You just check the ledger. Does this person actually have the coins that they're sending to you? Is it actually in the ledger? If it is, then it's very clear that it's a legitimate transaction. If it's not, then you can find out. And in fact, most Bitcoin wallets that exist do this kind of automatically in the background and say, okay, well, you already received it or you didn't, and so on. So that's how that works.
So I just got my first Bitcoin wallet this week. I've been a holdout. I know it spiked. What was that? 2017 or so. There was a big spike, and it kind of went down again, and now it's spiking like it never has. So I have an Electrum. I don't know if that's a good one or not, but that's
a decent one. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the program that I downloaded, and I went to I just like someone who's green into this. I just Googled, or not Google. I DuckDuckGo. There we go. That's the new one I'm using. Buy Bitcoin, and it took me to a website, and I bought some Bitcoin, and it wasn't that difficult. There's a little bit of a fee and so forth. Could you just practically walk us through what programs, what, how versatile is this? Can you have it on your phone and pay for things at a restaurant? What is this good for, and how do we attain it, especially if this is something we've never done before?
Yeah, so the easiest way to attain it is through exchanges. And there's a lot of different exchanges. And depending on what part of the world you happen to be in, there's many options. In the United States, you have Gemini, Ipit, Coinbase, River, Cash App, Kraken, and many others. Probably the easiest way for people that are sort of like a little bit hesitant about the tech stuff is you can use something like Cash App or River Financial. Those are pretty good. Cash App is especially nice because it's integrated. It's a lot like Venmo. You can send people money back and forth. But one of the options that it has is the ability to buy Bitcoin directly from the app, and it's already hooked up to your debit account at a bank or whatever, and you can just go and buy it fairly easily. And if you need to send somebody Bitcoin, they have that function as well. There's a lot of different ones. River is especially good if you want to do something called dollar cost averaging. Because Bitcoin's price is just so volatile, a lot of people get tempted to just try to time the market and, buy when it dips and so on. What I found is that the people that are looking to buy the dip generally never get in because it's never low enough for them. And when it dips, they're like, oh, I'll just wait for it to dip more and so on. So from a psychological standpoint, it's a lot easier if you're just saying, all right, I'll buy $10 a week, $100 a week, or whatever. So river.com, that's another excellent wallet and so on. But yeah, I mean, there are many that exist all over the world. If you live in, Korea, there's different ones. There's ones in Turkey, in Bahrain, and Europe, and Africa, and I mean, literally all of these. Now, as far as your other question goes, which is, how, can you pay for things with it? You can, but what I found is that most people don't want to. This is more their savings and not their spending money. So if you think of it as as digital gold or something like that, when's the last time like you used gold to go pay for something? I mean,
Right.
you can. There might be some people that would take it. But generally, that's not the main use case. There's a lot of technology already for paying for stuff, right? Not only do we have credit cards, we also have Venmo and Cash App and Octopus Card and Google Pay and Apple Pay and Samsung Pay and M-Pesa in Africa and WeChat in China. And I mean, just there's just so many different ones, and they all exist for a reason. They're probably taking a small cut to make things more convenient and so on. But the main use case for Bitcoin, like I said before, is to store value across time. And it's done like anyone that's held Bitcoin for at any point pretty much in the last 12 years of its existence has made money on it because it is perfectly scarce. And as we argue in the book, it's a lot closer to what God designated Bitcoin to designated money to be, which is storing the value that you provided other people to with your labor and so on.
Now, I want to ask a question for those who are skeptical about this, because they're saying, Jimmy, I've heard you talk about the scarcity of it, the blockchain technology, which makes sure it's secure. This might be a good savings, things to hedge against what's going to happen with the dollar, et cetera. But Bitcoin is only as valuable as the value people ascribe to it, which is why it's kind of volatile at times. And then if you have it, it's stored on your hard drive or hard drive somewhere on your phone or whatever. And if something goes wrong with that, where's my Bitcoin? So could you speak to those two issues? What about the volatile nature of Bitcoin or the perceived nature? And then, what if something happens to your hard drive where you have, thousands of dollars of Bitcoin or millions, perhaps? Where does that all go?
Okay, yeah. So let me speak to the volatility first. That is a reality of Bitcoin, and it's been that way for a long time. Anytime you have sort of like the monetization of an asset, it tends to do that. I mean, a lot of people view the 70s like oil crisis as something energy related. Actually, it was because the US went off the gold standard, and then they made it so that that oil was denominated in the dollar. So there was sort of like a monetization of oil that created a lot of volatility around oil in the 70s. So that sort of thing is kind of common and does happen with things like Bitcoin. But that volatility is also why it breaks upward. If it went up on a slow and steady rate, I mean, no asset exists that does that just sort of goes up at a steady rate over a very long period of time. You're going to expect some level of volatility. There's a lot of FOMO and a lot of people that sort of pile on at certain points, and you get bubbles, and human psychology and all that sort of plays into it. So there is volatility, but generally if you hold over 4 years, I don't think there's ever been a period of 4 years where if you bought 4 years before and then sold 4 years later, like you wouldn't have made money, at least in dollar terms, and so on. So that's volatility. As far the other question is more around security and custody. So it really is like gold in the sense that if you're holding your own Bitcoin, it's kind of like having a gold bar in your house or buried in your backyard or whatever. If you lose it, you really lose it. And this is not something that we're used to as a as a generation. I mean, this used to be much more common, like say 150 years ago, where people sort of kept things. But during the last 70 years of sort of the financialization of pretty much everything around the world, they've taken out bearer instruments. Bearer instruments are things that you hold, and if you can't present it, then you've actually lost it. Stocks used to be like that. Bonds used to be like that. A lot of things used to be like that, but now they're all sort of like held by custodians and so on. So part of learning all of this is just learning to be responsible for your own stuff, instead of relying on a third party, because oftentimes it's the third party that actually steals from you. And that's part of the learning that you have to do. Now, that said, one of the nice things about Bitcoin is that it has security properties that no other asset can, including multi-sig. This is the idea that you can have something kind of like, I'm sure you've heard of like, sorry.
So, no, I'm sorry about that. Something knocked my camera here. So we're back. Speaking of volatility, yeah, I'm just gonna. So sorry about that. Yeah,
it's okay.
Go ahead.
So you have something like multi-sig, and the best way to describe it is how the president has like one of the nuclear footballs, but there's like two other ones, and you need 2 of 3 of them in order to do the launch code.
Right.
So you could do something similar with your Bitcoin, where you have something like multi-sig. So even if you lose one, you have the other 2 or something like that. And it could be sort of arbitrary. It could be 3 of 5 or 7 of 11 or something like that. In addition, there are services that will help you set up this stuff. So Unchained Capital, which is in my hometown, they specialize in helping people secure their Bitcoin. So you might have literally millions of dollars in Bitcoin. They will hold one of the keys for you. So they can't move your Bitcoins or send it to themselves. So they don't have custody. But if you have the other 2 keys and maybe one of them is in a bank vault or something like that, you can always transact whenever you want with their help. And if they go bankrupt or something, you can get the one out of your bank vault and then you can do something. But if you lose that one, then you still have recourse to go and recover your funds. So from a security standpoint, it's a lot more robust. There are more options, and there's a lot of different ways in which you can secure it. There are even more solutions coming down the line, including like, you can spend it, or if you happen to lose your phone, then you can spread. You can get 3 of 5 of your friends to coordinate and give you back your coins or something like that. And those are solutions that are probably maybe like a year away, but those are coming as part of the Bitcoin protocol.
What about transferring? So this is a very practical question for me, I'm asking, but I have my Electrum wallet, right? And I have different, I'm actually opening it right now just to take a look. There's different, I don't know what you would call them. Let's see. We got the right password here. There we go. Addresses, different addresses. Am I getting that right? So yeah. I have a limited amount, but I have, quite a few. And so I've done 2 transactions so far, and I have different amounts in 2 different addresses. And if I want to transfer those amounts, let's say to my phone or to another wallet, how easy is that to do?
Okay, well, you would just need the address of wherever you're sending it. It could be to yourself or to other people or whatever. As soon as they give you that address over email, text, or even a QR code or something like that. If it's a QR code, you usually scan it with your phone or something. And then you input that into the software and say, this is where I want to send my Bitcoins, and this is the amount that I want to send it. And the wallet will figure out, the transaction that needs to be signed, and using the private key that's on the phone or on whatever device, that it will sign that transaction and broadcast it to the network. At that point, it goes into the network, and you might have to wait a little bit until it's confirmed, but then it's confirmed, then you could do that. I can send to somebody on the other side of the world.
So it's relatively easy.
Yeah.
It's like depositing a check. I mean,
Yeah, and it clears a lot faster, right? And this is part of the nice thing is, if you know anything about like settlement, it's you might think that you're actually getting things right away, but if you know anything about like how things settle on the back end, it's usually like 3 to 5 days. So if you execute a stock trade, it feels like it's right away, but the actual settlement happens like 3 days later when the clearinghouse actually adjusts all the accounts and so on, and all of those things are in the background, so you don't really know about it. But with Bitcoin, it settles. It's done. It's like you really gave it to the other person, and you no longer have possession of it. So in that way, it's a little more permanent, and you can't really claw it back or appeal to somebody to get that, which is pretty important given sort of what a lot of conservatives, especially in the world today, are going through. So
Wow.
yeah.
So that's fascinating to me, and I mean, as someone new to this, I wanted to just pick your brain on that because I have gone to restaurants, or I've seen them at least. I'm not sure if I've been there or people have just sent me pictures of things, but there are businesses now that are accepting Bitcoin, and you can go in, and I never understood really how it works. I guess you whip out your phone, you have some there, and you can just buy your coffee or whatever you're getting. And I'm wondering if the future is going to look more like that with especially with the incoming administration and the monetary policy we're probably going to see, if more businesses are going to start doing that kind of thing, or we'll see other cryptocurrencies pop up.
Well, so let me address the other cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I wanted to get into that. Go ahead.
All right, so there's a lot of different cryptocurrencies right now. I think last I checked, it's somewhere in the vicinity of 7,500 and different cryptocurrencies, and they're creating them every day, right? Like there are new ones that are being created all the time. Now, I specifically tell people not to go to those for a reason, and it's in chapter 8 of our book where we talk about that. Why like the altcoins are very different than Bitcoin. So one of the key qualities of Bitcoin is that it's decentralized. There's no central authority. There's nobody that says, that's the adjudicator of everything. It's actually just pure software, and you either sent it or you didn't, and that's it. The second most popular cryptocurrency is called Ethereum, and it was created by a guy named Vitalik Buterin back in 2014. And because he created it, he printed for himself something like 10% of Ethereum, something like that. So most of these altcoins have a creator that printed money for themselves, right? It's not very different than fiat money, and in fact, that's sort of the scam, is that they print the money for themselves, and then they sell it to other people based on some specious reasoning or something like that, and they don't actually use it for what they quote unquote intended for. Most people just use it as sort of speculation, gambling, something like that. And they're all centralized. They have, at multiple points, they have a creator, often like a developer foundation. One of the things that Ethereum did back in 2016 was they had some incident on their platform where somebody was able to drain about 1/6 of all Ethereum that existed away from the people that had owned it, because there was a flaw in the smart contract that they created. The Ethereum developers decided, okay, we're going to roll all of those back. And if that sounds like a bailout, that's because it was. They basically bailed out all the people that made the stupid decision to put it into this insecure smart contract. So, like, for me, altcoins are not the same thing at all, because they're all centralized. One of the things that I tell people about Bitcoin is that Satoshi Nakamoto disappeared in 2010. And that was probably the best gift that Satoshi could have given to the entire Bitcoin community, because by disappearing, it became decentralized. There was no central decision maker. There was nobody to appeal to and say, can I get this money back, or can I get your favor, or something like that. All of these other ones essentially work a lot like fiat currency, and they print their own money. And unfortunately, there's a lot of grift and scamming and stealing and taking advantage of people that don't understand what's going on. But that would be for altcoins. So I forget what your other question was, though.
So do I. I don't know if I have one. I can come up with another one, though. So someone's listening to you right now and they're saying, Jimmy, you're making a very compelling case. And this is probably someone who's already kind of fed up with the Federal Reserve System and understand our dollars really aren't worth the paper they're printed on, or they could be very soon. And they're going to invest in some Bitcoin. I want to know from you, someone who doesn't know anything about this. You tell me the app, where to go to buy it, and how to store it.
Okay. I know a lot of people are probably not too happy with Jack Dorsey right now for a multitude of reasons, but he does have a very easy way to buy Bitcoin, and it's called Cash App. And from what I'm told, he's actually a little bit hands-off on Twitter, but he's much more involved in Square, which is the company that puts out Cash App. So that's an app that you can download on Android or iPhone. Very easy. You put in your debit card and it lets you buy Bitcoin right away. You just have to click. I think they actually have it so that you can also buy stocks and so on. But Bitcoin is the main one. That makes it super easy. Now, if you want custody of your Bitcoin, if you're doing that, you're really custodying it with Square. They have your Bitcoin, and they essentially they owe you some Bitcoin, and you have a claim against them, which is more or less how dollars work with banks. I don't know if you knew that, but if you have $5,000 at your bank, you have a claim against the bank, but they can not give it to you if they don't want to.
Right.
It's kind of this trusted third party that has control of everything. So it is nice to be able to control your own currency. And actually, let me tell a quick story. So the thing that put Bitcoin on the map was in 2010. PayPal cut its relationship with WikiLeaks. And I don't know if you remember back in 2010, but they were putting out a lot of very embarrassing, material to the United States government. So the US government pressured PayPal, you can't let them take donations. So they cut off, they essentially deplatformed WikiLeaks from PayPal. So after that, WikiLeaks was looking for a way to get donations, and they found Bitcoin, and they decided to take donations in Bitcoin at that starting in 2010. Crazy part of that is people started getting into Bitcoin. That was around when Satoshi disappeared, because there was a huge influx of users and so on. But the amount that they actually got from in 2010 still funds them to this day, because it was less than $1 back in 2010. So they, even if they got a $10 donation, that's 100 Bitcoins, which is worth $3.8 million or something like that right now. So it was, for them, it was kind of revolutionary. I know that Stripe, is no longer, they deplatformed the Trump campaign, for example, so they won't process any of those. So for conservatives, I think it's pretty prudent to take possession of your stuff, because all of these trusted third parties that are there to sort of enforce government mandates and so on, they're going to start coming after people. And this is just, you can't have gold bars in your own house. That's another way to do it. But having some form of wealth or savings, because the first thing that everyone comes after, one other story. So the previous book that I wrote, Little Bitcoin Book, I was one of 8 authors on that as well. And one of my co-authors was Alex Gladstein of the Human Rights Foundation. And one of the things that he told me, he works with human rights people all over the world, is the very first thing that a government does to you if they don't like what you are doing is to cut off all financial access. And this was why he was really interested in Bitcoin, because this happens everywhere.
Oh
Is
yeah.
if they don't like you, that's what they do. So
Or you
yeah,
read
that
about
would be
the,
my
the Holocaust, even way long before anyone even thought, anyone knew that there were going to be the death camps and everything. There was a financial war, and people were stuck. People that were previously very rich, didn't have anywhere to put their money, or so I think that's what's going on now. And the technology makes it easier for them, but also makes it harder because of things like Bitcoin. What do you suggest if someone doesn't want to go with Cash App or Jack Dorsey?
Well, River
What's
Financial is pretty
River?
good.
Okay.
I don't think they have a phone app, but you can go on their website, river.com, I think it is. A bunch of good guys. I'm actually having dinner with the CEO tonight. So, but
Okay.
yeah, he's a really good guy. Really understands stuff. There are numerous other ones. Itbit. I mean, Gemini is by the Winklevoss twins, so you can. I don't know how you feel about them, but you can use that exchange as well. Kraken's a pretty good one. Jesse Powell is a pretty good guy. He's the CEO of Kraken. Level.co. I don't want to shill them too much because I'm an advisor, so I feel like it'd be a little bit of a conflict of interest there. LVL.co, that's another one. But yeah, there's I believe PayPal has the option of being able to buy Bitcoin as well, which is kind of like full circle with the WikiLeaks stuff. But they have it so that you can't withdraw, so you can't take possession of your Bitcoin, so it's not nearly as good. If you're in the stock market, you could do something similar with GBTC, which is a ticker symbol created by Digital Currency Group, and this is run by Barry Silbert out in New York. And he basically makes it so that you can have exposure to Bitcoin in sort of like a stock market context, except there tends to be a pretty significant premium to that. If you're interested in using your IRA funds or retirement funds for this sort of thing, there are numerous services that can help you do that. I have a friend that does this for a living, right? He helps people get Bitcoin into their self-directed IRA so that they can sort of control that without having to put it into GBTC, which charges a 2% management fee and so on. So lots of different options. I'm sure there are others. There are certain, I think there was a fund that was launched maybe like 2 weeks ago, with a 0.75 base or 75 basis point management fee that lets you invest in Bitcoin, and they'll take care of everything and give you the proceeds and so on. So lots of different options depending on your particular needs and the level of investment that you might want to do. It's obviously different if you have $400 million to invest versus like $400.
Right.
And those are very different sort of.
Do you
things.
think the IRS is going to crack down on some of this? I'm just curious. And
Well, so the IRS had on their on the tax form in 2020, like, did you do any cryptocurrency transactions as a specific question on there? So they definitely are interested, and they're keeping track, and they if I'm not mistaken, they hired a company to do blockchain analysis to see if they can figure out how much Bitcoin you might own and so on. So if there's ever sort of any kind of wealth tax, I imagine they would come after that. There are ways if you want to keep the upside of Bitcoin and not have to take capital gains and things like that. You can take out a loan against your Bitcoin, and this is one of the other sort of ways to avoid taxes is get a loan in Bitcoin against your Bitcoin, and then that way you have the upside and you still have access to cash and so on. And then you can roll that loan over if Bitcoin price increases, or you can pay it back or sell some or whatever at the end of the term, and so on. So lots of different options. And from a financial and tax implication standpoint, there, it depends on your particular need and where your income bracket happens to be and so on.
fascinating. Well, I do appreciate you explaining all that. There's so many directions that we could go, I'm sure, and you've written a few books. So if people want to go check those out, they can go to your website, programmingbitcoin.com.
Hmm.
And that, I'm looking forward to getting involved in this a little more, and in diversifying my own savings, etc. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's skyrocketing right now, and it has been for a little while. So anyway,
Yeah,
any
it
final?
has, because it's just better money, and that's
Yeah.
what we argue in the book. It's it solves a lot of these problems of centralization, which is essentially these government authorities sort of taking control of you through your money, and that the unfortunate reality is that too many people sort of succumb to that, and being free of that, I think, would be healthy for a lot of people. And one of the things we argue is that fiat money is in many ways kind of like we call it like monetary Stockholm syndrome. You end up loving the thing that enslaves you, and too
Mm,
many people right now are very much enslaved to money and worship money, whether they know it or not.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's Proverbs says that, the borrower is
Mhm.
slave to the lender, and we are
Mhm.
commanded as Christians. One of the principles in Proverbs is that the righteous man gives an inheritance to his children's children, and so that's
Mhm.
why I don't want to put my my all my eggs into dollars, because I just don't see that as being a viable you know tender for the future. So anyway, I appreciate it, Jimmy. God bless you. And if anyone wants to find out more, like I said, you can go to his website, which is programmingbitcoin.com. God bless. Well, I hope that was helpful for you. Jimmy Song is one of the big names in this field. It was really nice of him to give us his time. Go check out his books if you have more questions. This has been on my mind the last couple weeks. I mean, we naturally, if we're live in an area where there's a threat to our property, we lock our doors. We have tools for self-defense, etc. That's just part of being a good steward of what God has entrusted to us, right? That's how we care for others. We need to have resources to share with others if we're going to share. And if we've earned those resources, we try to protect that. So it's just part of being a responsible adult, really. And we don't think of those things when it comes to perhaps the value that we've allocated and we've given to banks. We just don't think of it as much naturally as we do about the physical things we have in our house. So that's why I wanted to have Jimmy on to talk about, hey, here's another way that you can try to protect against what could possibly happen, especially in the next few years. And this was something that was smart even years ago to just have that. So check it out. You don't have to, but if it's something that you're listening and you think, well, maybe that's something I can get into, I would encourage you to do some more homework and get into it. I do want to make a few announcements, say a few things, give you some updates. Number one, people have asked about the Discerning Christians website. Where is it? It does exist, but it's not ready. And it's so we're on the verge. We've been on the verge now for weeks. But the main guy who's putting this together, he has a full-time job, and this is just something that we've been working on it the last few days. But because I've really said we got to get this rolling out. But it's something that we've been almost there. And here's what I want to say. I think Friday or Saturday. We should be able to. It looks like we'll be able to run the beta test, which means those who are patrons, you'll be able to test it out. We'll work out the kinks, and then hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we'll be able to open up for everyone. And that will be a networking tool, and you'll be able to put your church on there. If you have a church that's against the social justice movement, biblically orthodox, you'll be able to put yourself as an individual, register yourself. You'll be able to use, if you don't want to register yourself as a person, you can use an avatar or something, but we'll have an integrated map and you'll be able to find people. And we're working on it, guys. There's just a lot of things happening. There's a lot of things that have happened so suddenly that have sucked up some of our time, especially in the last few weeks, my time. It's just prevented me from getting to some of those projects, but we understand the urgency. We're well aware. The second thing, many of you have asked me, you've sent me the Russell Moore article and you want me to respond. I'm not going to respond to that. At this point, it's just, I don't think it's worth my time right now. I have not read it in its entirety. Some people have sent me some clips. It looks terrible, but it's a narrative we could have all already guessed. And that's kind of the main thing. This is just what we've been seeing for 2 years. And Russell Moore, just like a lot of the big evangelical leaders right now, is going along with the play the media is trying to make. The play the media is making right now is every Trump supporter is that Buffalo Man, the shaman who practices shamanism, and he's a environmental activist. I mean, he's not really a right wing guy, but he's kind of a nut. And right now he's not eating in prison because they're not giving him organic food, and he looks kind of like weird, right, or strange or different. And there's a picture of him. I think it was in Nancy Pelosi's seat or something. It was somewhere. He in the Capitol. There's a few pictures of him, and all Christians are, who supported Trump are him. Everyone who voted for Trump, that's who they are. That's who they're supporting. And it's a play that we could have kind of anticipated just without even having to read the article. We know what the point that's being made. And of course, the hypocrisy is overwhelming. We know this. We've talked about it with the BLM riots, etc. We know. Now, I will say two things for you, because as you know, if you haven't seen them, I've already put out my experience, and I didn't go into the Capitol or anything, but I was part of the peaceful rally that took place that day, as were the vast majority. I'm talking like 98.5%, 99% of the people there. Had no clue what was going on inside the Capitol. I was part of that group, and there was, we were just there to basically say, hey, we want to show some solidarity with those who believe that this was, and I got to be careful now what I say for YouTube, but who had questions about the election. We'll put it that way. So I've gone through my whole experience. I've even talked about in a post that I made, which I'll link the post. If you want to see the Facebook post that I made a few days ago, I said this before some timelines started coming out, but now the timelines are out. The timing of this makes no sense. In fact, maybe I should just read that for you guys, because I know some of you are still feeling like you're hammered over this, and I'll just give you this last word on it, or last word for now, and then I'll analyze it a little bit before we finish this video. Here's what I wrote. This was on January 11th. It's short. I'll just read it to you. I probably spent 10 hours reconstructing what happened at the Capitol. Censorship has made this process more difficult, but I think I've gotten about as far as I'll get at this point. Unpreparedness and chaos are both good words to describe what happened inside the Capitol. There are members of radical groups, including some sympathetic with Antifa, who were present and did help instigate along with angry Trump supporters. And that is proven, by the way. Hundreds of Trump supporters made it into the Capitol. The police were totally unprepared. In some instances, the police let protesters near or inside the Capitol. In others, they retreated after struggling with protesters. The vast majority of those who made it into the building were not angry, but peaceful, staying in walkway areas, picking up trash, etc. And there's videos of all of this, and you can find videos of it on this channel. Many thought they were allowed in. Some of this is due to the fact they were not at the front of the line, where if there was a struggle, few witnessed it. In other words, people are coming from behind. They have no clue what led people to go into the Capitol. They just know that they're allowed to go into the Capitol, and don't expect a lot of the people who went in there. Some did not. There was a lot who did not, because they realized, wait a minute, hold on, that's not supposed to be. But there's a lot of people in a crowd of 1 million who, they don't know. They think, oh, we're allowed to go into the Capitol. So that you have to understand the vantage point that people had. It's not like, with a BLM riot, it's not like, there's big alarms going off and glass is broken everywhere and people are running out with big screen TVs, right? Obviously, you shouldn't be going into the Best Buy. It wasn't like that for most of the people who went in. So that's all I'm saying there. Let's see. Police officers also were giving directions and allowing selfies to be taken with protesters. This also contributed to the sense that they were allowed to go in. It is important to realize that those in the front at the Capitol where agitation occurred could not have been present for all of Trump's speech, and most were probably not present for any of it. Those who listened and followed Trump's instructions arrived much later, and this is 100% true. This is why, I left right basically at the end of Trump's speech, towards the end. This is why by the time we even got there, it was, we had no clue. There was already people there. But whatever had happened was already taking place, was happening, without any of the people's knowledge. And you got to understand, we didn't have hardly, the cell phone reception was terrible until the stay-at-home order was given. All of a sudden, then we all had good cell phone reception. But until then, it was terrible. So anyway, let's see. Those who listened, like myself, and followed Trump's instructions arrived much later. Trump called for a peaceful march. Listen to his speech. The end of his speech, he says we're going to peacefully walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. But some mainstream media reported that Trump supporters were storming the Capitol before his speech was even complete. And this is true. There's a NPR, I think it was, article, 9:30 in the morning. I checked it out. They're already posting, 9:33, that Trump supporters are storming the Capitol. The most loyal Trump supporters who cared about his words were not present for any of the initial confrontations. The motive of the majority, as represented in video testimony, seems to be a somewhat naive and sincere attempt to inform their representatives to not certify fraudulent electoral votes. There was a very small but evil minority, and I need to say that, evil minority, very small but evil, who stole items in disheveled offices, etc. So those who were involved in that kind of stuff. Now, and I've said, look, the reason I can say it's evil is because this is a disorganized mob. That's why. There's not a legitimate authority that's saying we're making war, we're going to come in here, we're going to be involved in espionage and stuff. That's why I say that, okay? Just for those who are maybe thinking that, hey, like I believe the revolution did take place inside the Capitol the next morning at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. When you know what happened. That's the revolution. The revolution is from the men in suits, not the men in boots. The men in boots are trying to prevent a revolution, right? It's very important we understand that and don't cede any ground on that one. But you don't, the men in boots, if they're a mob, and if a very small contingent of them are part of this group of people, and they're going to use the sheer amount of people to hide and then to go do what they want to do, that can't be sanctioned if there's no legitimate authority there. All right, let's keep going. The hundreds of thousands outside the Capitol, of which I was a part, had no idea of what happened inside. If the goal of the majority had been to have an insurrection, there would have been one, and no one present would have stopped the crowd. The crowd did not want that. In other words, the crowd has surrounded the Capitol. There was enough people there. If you wanted to really have an insurrection, you could have done it, but that's not what the people wanted. This is further reinforced by the fact that many videos show Trump supporters tackling or confronting individuals they believe to be Antifa members who are damaging property outside the Capitol. We witnessed no property destruction, and neither did hundreds of thousands. And that's true. I didn't see any of that. I can speculate about why most riot police were hours late, why Capitol Police were ill-prepared and allowed and directed protesters to enter in some instances, why some of the outfits, helmets, tactical gear, etc. worn in the videos by protesters weren't present at the Trump rally, why the riot police who were present stood down, why multiple sources claim Antifa or some kind of group of radicals came from a different direction than those streaming in from the Trump rally, and the list goes on. But there are some conclusions I can reach that do not fit the media narrative. And this is where we'll get back into the Russell Moores of the world, because they're just parroting the media narrative. Number one, Trump did not call for violence. He called for peace in his speech, and again in a video Twitter deleted. And by the way, again last night, and again last Monday. There's now 4 or 5 times he's called for peace. Number two, 98% of attendees had no participation or knowledge about what took place inside. Number three, most of the hundreds who made it inside had no desire to harm anyone or anything and remained civil. Number four, after a young lady who was not behaving violently was unexpectedly killed by an officer, those inside left and seemed both shocked and surprised. Violence occurred. And this is very key. It's very key. Multiple interviews of the people who found out about or were close to where this young lady was killed. They were done at that point. They all left. Said, hold on. They didn't fight. They didn't. There was a lady in there who was angry that one of the guys who was breaking a window, right, in the front, so most people probably couldn't see him. He was an instigator, and he got behind the police. He changed his clothes, wondering if the guy's even a Trump supporter. We don't know, because there's so many different radical elements that seem to have infiltrated the crowd beforehand, before Trump even finished speaking, and it's a 45-minute walk, so there's no way they were there for Trump's speech. Anyway, here's the thing about that though. That just took the wind out of the sails. So if they were really trying to do an insurrection, that would have angered them and motivated them more. Hey, we're going to fight now. They didn't. They turned around. Number 5, the lack of preparedness and incompetence on the part of whoever was controlling law enforcement can only be due to extreme negligence or evil intent. And more has come out about that now. They were, I think, what was it, 6 times? There was a denial of sending National Guard in. Number 6, condemning Trump or his supporters as a group for what happened is simply lying. And this gets into the last part here. This is what Russell Moore's doing. And this is what all the others are doing. I don't even have to read the article. This is what they're doing. They're trying to condemn Christians, Christian nationalism, any Christians who would have supported Trump, because Trump's responsible. You see the logical leaps. Minority of people do this thing that was not approved of by the vast majority, right? Even in that audience. Blame the audience. They're all a mob. They're all part of this. They're all somehow, revolutionaries that are trying to go, rip down our system, which when that's really the opposite is going on. But that's the first play. And you got to make a leap there. That's an unargued for premise. Number 2, the second unargued for premise is that Donald Trump's responsible. He planned this. He motivated the whole thing. Well, that's actually just a lie, because he said, let's march peacefully. So there's no, and he's condemned it, etc. So that's just another leap. That's a lie. And then you have to make the third leap, which is every single person who voted Trump, that's what they voted for. In fact, I had a reporter from a mainstream news publication reach out to me last night, and those are some of the questions he was asking. In fact, maybe I should pull that up for you, and show you what I wrote back if I still have it here. I think I do somewhere. Let's see. I wasn't expecting to go into all this detail, but now that the juices are flowing in my mind, I'm kind of I'm thinking differently about it, because I know you guys are getting hammered out there, and I want to give you something to be able to respond to some of this. So let me do that. So there's a reporter that reached out to me. I'm going to read for you the questions he asked, because they're relating to this last point. Is everyone who voted for Trump responsible for Viking Man, right? Number 1, he asks me, do pro-Trump Christians have anything to apologize for, as some now claim? Why or why not? And I said, most Christians who supported Donald Trump did so because they believed he was a better option than Joe Biden for preserving religious liberty, promoting a pro-life agenda, and preventing totalitarian policies. Donald Trump called for a peaceful march. Those who initiated forced entries into the Capitol could not have been present for most of his speech. The hundreds of thousands who listened to his speech and showed up later, including Christians, were peaceful and had no knowledge that anything illegal had or was taking place. And this is very key, guys. Jesus himself did not apologize to his political enemies, right? Scribes, Pharisees, they're political enemies, for the sinful tendencies which existed in the crowds that followed him, even if they made his opponents nervous. You can go to Luke 20, 5-6, and there's many examples, but the Pharisees were afraid of the crowds. And so Jesus says, hey, of what baptism was John the Baptist, right? Doug Wilson made this point in an article. Of what baptism was John the Baptist? Was he from heaven? Was he from men? And the Pharisees said, what are we going to do? If we say from heaven, he's going to say, why did you not believe him? If we say, it's not from heaven, then the crowd is going to stone us. What do we do? So the crowd following Jesus at that point, they would have stoned those who questioned John's baptism, or at least they're afraid of this violent tendency. And you remember the political situation is volatile at that point as well. Jesus didn't then, I'm going to release a statement of condemnation and take responsibility for all my terrible followers. Jesus actually went into the temple and started overturning tables. So it's an interesting, if you look at just the example of Jesus, he wouldn't do what Russell Moore's doing. He wouldn't be like, I'm going to take responsibility for all these, Christians who voted for Trump because I'm a Christian too. And no, that's ridiculous. You're responsible for what you're responsible for. You're not responsible for what other people. And so that this is just a basic Christian principle. So I told him that Christianity teaches that guilt and repentance are only required for one's actions, not the actions of others. Number 2, reporter asks me, will Christians be vilified for supporting Trump, just as pro-Trumpers in social media are being vilified? Should or will there be calls to temper language and whatnot at churches so as not to incite violence? Why or why not? My response: Christians who supported President Trump have already been vilified by people in their own denominations, including Russell Moore, David French, and Tim Keller. It is likely, given the way totalitarians generally behave, that churches which hold more conservative beliefs on marriage, abortion, and religious freedom will be targeted by political opponents. Because freedom of speech and conscience are fading from the public square under the pretense of preserving safety, it is certain churches who do not endorse official narratives will become targets. And third question: should Biden weigh in on the above? If so, what should he say or do? And what I said is, it would be wise for Biden to realize there are millions of devout Christians who do not support many of his policies and will use any legal and peaceful means they can to resist what they see as an attack on their faith. For Biden to successfully gain the respect of Christians, he would need to take his own Catholic faith's teaching on abortion, family, and socialism seriously. So you might have said something better or different. I mean, I wrote this very late at night and very quickly, but this is the kind of thing a mainstream news reporter is asking me. This is the kind of thing that's on people's minds, and there's a few premises. I already explained to you all the logical jumps you have to do, but there's a few things that I just want to point out. Number one, there's an assumption here that the Capitol is somehow sacred, and our constitutional process is sacred, but that the Capitol itself, I mean, Nancy Pelosi got on the camera and started talking about this is the temple of democracy, right? After a full summer, spring and summer, of riots, of ripping down our country's history, destroying monuments to the founding fathers, to Columbus, renaming things. I'm not even talking about all the stuff in the South, the Confederate monuments, etc. I'm talking just the American, that everyone north, south, east, or west says, hey, these are some here. They're being ripped down, guys, ripped down before our eyes, and the Democrats applauded with glee. You know what they said about protesters. You know what Big Eva said about those protests. We've got to understand them. Got to. In many ways, they supported the narrative that led to it, etc. And I debunk the narrative at every turn. I tried to debunk it biblically. I tried to debunk it historically, where it could be debunked historically. And you saw what they did. Now we're seeing history rewritten before our eyes. And one of the features of this rewriting is that somehow, all of a sudden, with the flip of a switch, now the Capitol, the Rotunda, the where the Senate and the House, where they meet, it's sacred. Capitol building is sacred. All those great big pictures of George Washington and even people like John C. Calhoun are in there, right? Daniel Webster, all these people that BLM thinks are racist, and they think that their ideas. I should put it this way: all these people that BLM thinks all their ideas stemmed from some kind of a racist agenda. That's the issue. It's not whether they're racist. It's do their ideas stem from racist agendas, the things they're known for, the things we respect them for. All these men, all of a sudden, they are housed in the temple for democracy. Well, I hope you caught that, because it's going to flip real quick once BLM gets moving again. When it's time to rip down our country's history, you're not going to hear that talk anymore. It only works on the right. It only works to people who care about this country's history and the ideas that made it what it is. It doesn't. The BLM folks, the Antifa folks, they don't care about any of that. So that is one of the key things that I don't hear anyone talking about, but you can see it, that they're channeling 1995 and a sense of tradition, right, to make you ashamed, to make you appalled that you would have voted for Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump he's against that tradition. He's against that American tradition that you respect and honor, except it's not true, guys. It's not true. The people who are forwarding that narrative are the ones against the tradition that you respect and love. And they're using what you love against you. That's the play. Second thing, they're assuming a systemic problem in Trump, in the right, in churches that voted, they're more conservative. This is what we've been, I've tried to show you this all along, that this was a setup from the beginning. Because all white people is such a broad group, right? You think about Germany for a minute. You think about the Jews, right? Small enough, powerful group in many ways, but small enough. you could vilify them. And what's happening right now is white people's that's just a very broad group. They're going to specify it because it became white people who weren't woke, right? Those are the real problematic people. And it's getting narrower. White people, how do you know if they weren't woke? Well, one of the signs is, did they vote for Donald Trump? Or were they, first were they at the Capitol march, and then did they vote for Donald Trump? And then they are, basically you can deplatform those people, dox them, get rid of their businesses. You can persecute those people. And if you remember how that vilification in Germany started, it wasn't, you were going to have camps right away. It started slowly, and it started with making you were an island, you were isolated, could not partake in business. That was the first step. And that step is already happening. And we're not going to go it's going to be different in the United States. We're probably going to go more a Maoist kind of way. It's going to be a combination of a few different things. Technology is going to play a big part in it. But if you believe, right, if you believe that in some way there was something fishy about the election, you're the worst kind of person. It's you want to call it depersoning, the vilification. You're the problem. The scapegoat thing. You're gonna become the one that bears all the blame. That's the play that they're running right now. What Buffalo Man did, in the Capitol, you're responsible for that if you forwarded this idea that there was something fishy about the election. Now that's a lie, obviously. All the people who think there's something fishy about the election weren't, going into the Capitol, and I just walked you through all of that. But what if, what if all that was true? And I think it is. I believe very strongly it is. What if all that stuff about the election is true? And Buffalo Man believed that, and he went and did something he shouldn't have done. Who do you blame for that? What do you blame for that? If the narrative is true, it's true, just objectively. You can't blame something objectively true for something that someone for an action someone takes when they learn about that truth, right? If it's true, it's true. It doesn't matter. You can't take something that's true and say, well, it's not true because of the effect that it brought, or what people did with that. Irrelevant. Doesn't matter, right? But that's the postmodern play, guys. See it in what Russell Moore's doing right now. That's the postmodern play. It's not true, not because it was objectively disproven. How many people have you heard even try to objectively disprove this? Well, I'm gonna go through your facts. And no, you never get those discussions. It's just, well, you're an evil person. You're an evil person because you believe that. That's the postmodernism, guys. I've tried to point this out, and now we're seeing it. We're seeing it right before our eyes. And it's subtle, and it's repeated often enough. But we're entering a postmodern age. Objective truth doesn't matter anymore. What happened at the Capitol doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the perception and whether or not they can use it to vilify. Don't let them do it. Don't let them vilify based on that. So it's this. They're applying the systemic principle and saying burn the whole thing down. Anything associated with Trump, and of course you will get leniency if you reject. If you reject the supposed lie, if you say, well, no, everything was good in the election, there was no problems with it, then you might be able to gain some kind of redemption. And he saw the error of his ways. He apologized for it. That's what they're trying to do, and they're going to try to break the opposition. It is a political play completely. And it's masquerading as a spiritual play in the church, and you can butter it up and put all sorts of spiritual language about how aghast and how horrified you are, and it's the most awful thing. But it's all fake, guys. It's all fake. It's not. You can feel those emotions, but it doesn't make those emotions true just because you feel something. And it's time for true men who see objective truth. I'm talking about men in church leadership positions to just, you need to talk about it. You need to talk about this. Those who are pastors who are watching this or listening, you do need to address this with your congregation, guys. You need to walk them through, and you can use this even as an example of how to think objectively, and then as well to prepare them for what's coming next, because many people don't realize how the vilification is going to reach them and what it will do to them. So this is something. I mean, we're at just for people who think, well, where is that in the Bible? Here's the thing. We're in such a basic spot, like the basic truths of Scripture, like you shouldn't lie, that kind of thing, right? That's where we are. That's what the issue's over. That's what the battles are over. Like, is lying even okay? These are like the most basic Christian doctrines. You don't need to be a theologian to even talk about these things and try to understand them correctly and accurately represent the truth in the situation. We're literally there. Should people be responsible for things that they didn't commit? If you let's say there's a narrative that was false, a complete false narrative. Oh, let's take Black Lives Matter narrative, right? And there's a lot about that narrative that's completely false, right? There's some things that they mix things together, but that the current police system, etc. It's provable that this is against a certain population in this country, and there are no ways to rectify it. The only thing to do is we must get rid of the police or something crazy like that, right? And then all policemen are just broad brushed, right? With this, that's a lie. That's a lie, because that's not true. And I've gone through in this podcast before, and I've shown you why that's not true. And that's at the level that we engage with it. We say, well, that's a lie. Let's whip out the statistics. Let's talk about let's talk about the incarceration rate. Let's talk about the disparities and what they could be attributed to. Let's talk about the police shootings and all that kind of stuff. Let's more importantly, why don't you prove to us? You have this narrative, prove it to us. Show us. We're open ears here. Why in this particular situation, why do you assume racism had something to do with it? Make them go on the defensive, make them prove these things. So let's say there were people like Nancy Pelosi to being one, anchors on the news like Cuomo's brother on CNN, and they're saying things like, AOC said even stuff like this. Our Kamala Harris said stuff like this. The riots aren't going to end, they shouldn't end, as Kamala Harris said, or. These are people that are, they're doing a good thing by pointing out all these problems. Meanwhile, they're burning things down. Then you can make the argument, because you can, of responsibility, because you can attach a leader's words to what's going on directly, because they're being direct about it. You don't have that situation here with Donald Trump. You have a man who has called for peace how many times, including before anything happened at the Capitol. And yet they're making the attachment because it's this invisible, systemic, etc. issue. There's a difference between the conservatives and the progressives in this. The conservatives actually listen to people's words and take them seriously. And they're not looking for dog whistles, etc. The left operates on dog whistles. And they'll go beyond it. They'll go beyond their dog whistle. But the left is constantly looking for anything. And they'll make it up if they don't have it, that they could possibly connect, and then they vilify. That's what Adorno's F scale was about. He's part of the Frankfurt School. There's fascist tendencies if you love your family too much. He'll get you to be a fascist in 2 steps or less. And that's what's going on now. If any connection to Donald Trump, or, he probably even loving this country to some extent, in the way traditionally people love this country. You don't want foreign powers influencing things, etc. You'll become a villain in 2 steps or less. That's the play. And we just got to reject it. That's all. And we're going to take some hits. Yeah, okay. People will think we're bad. They'll say names about us. Yep, they will. This is why Paul Washer said years ago, you're not going to go to jail for being a Christian. You're not going to be persecuted because, we're persecuting the Christians. It will be because you're bigots, and they're going to attach you to something. That's why. So hopefully that was helpful to you. I also want to say, tomorrow I'm getting on a plane. We're going to start the documentary process with the Nini's Deli. And you can watch my interview with Juan Riesco if you want to know more about that, or you just even go to DuckDuckGo, put in the news, put in Nini's Deli, and you'll see what we're talking about. I'm going to put in the info section, if you want to donate to that project, to help us out, to get the story out there, then we would really appreciate it. It just converges all sorts of things, a social justice movement, the church and what the church is doing in response to it, etc. The gospel is going to be presented. We're putting it out there, guys. We're not backing down. We are, despite the media blackout, we're going to keep going. And I'll have more announcements for you as far as media alternatives. You can already go into the info section, see all the places, all the alternative social media you can find me at. And we're going to stay connected. So, hey, God bless you. Have a good weekend. Worship the Lord in gladness. And with the righteous indignation and the sorrow that's in your heart, I totally understand. Go to him with that. And then we're going to keep going, guys. We're going to keep going. This doesn't change our mission. And in fact, maybe we got to ramp it up, cut out the fat, and make yourself useful. Whether that's prayer, whether it's going to look different for all of us. It could be that you're going to be involved in the church more. It could be that you're going to be involved in the political environment more now. Get involved, guys. We have to. There's no other way around it. So God bless you all.